My wife and I are back from holiday. Hi. If you didn't know we were on holiday, you don't follow my wife on Instagram. I don't know if she's put up enough photos, but she likes to just do 4 or 5 a day. If we're on a beach, 4 or 5 a day, 2 a day. Yeah, whatever. I mean, yes, darling. So a few weeks ago, I was asked to speak by the UEA Christian Union. This was a challenging experience for a number of reasons. It was a challenging experience partly because going onto the UEA campus made me feel really old. It reminded me of the fact that it was over 15 years ago that I started at UEA. As I was speaking to this group of people, I was saying about the fact that back when I was a student, back when I started university, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter, and I could see them looking at me and thinking, man, this guy's so old, he still uses Facebook and Twitter. Not only it's kind of been and gone for those guys, and it hadn't even been when I started at university. But it was challenging for another reason, a much less amusing reason. It was challenging because of the topic that they gave me to talk about. The title that I was given for this lunchtime conversation was Hopeless, ? A conversation about mental health. And it went well. It was well attended. It was well received, I think. We got some decent feedback afterwards. But I found preparing for it so challenging. I didn't find it preparing for it challenging particularly because of kind of my experience of the subject matter. As many of you will be aware, I'm a psychiatrist. That's my day job. I talk about mental health all the time. But what was challenging was when I started to look at the statistics and what the statistics say for students and actually for young people. In April 2018, the Prince's Trust published its annual UK Youth Index, which is a survey of 16 to 25-year-olds, and it found that 1 in 4 felt hopeless. 1 in 4, 25%. Not of people aged 16 to 25 describe themselves as hopeless. Other striking statistics, 3 out of 5 young people regularly felt stressed amid concerns over jobs and money. Half had experienced a mental health problem, and almost half said that they did not feel that they could cope well with setbacks in life. Looking more closely at the campus, the statistics showed that 1 in 4 students would face having mental illness while at university. The rates of depression and anxiety are incredibly high. One survey suggested that 82% of students experience stress and anxiety and 45% experience depression. Then there was the statistic that really hit me. According to the UEA website, 48 students on the UEA campus were reported to have attempted to take their own lives in the academic year 2016 to 2017. Now, I'm a psychiatrist, as I say. I spend a lot of time talking about difficult topics. I am not easily shocked by the mention of suicide. I know that suicidal thoughts are far more common than we talk about or admit. Yet there was something about that statistic from the campus where I studied, from my university, that struck home. Of people who felt so hopeless that ending their life felt like a better option than going on. And when faced with the cold, hard statistic, the reality of statistics like that, it is easy to feel overwhelmed. To feel overwhelmed as we look at the challenges in our society. What do we do if there are so many young people who feel hopeless and ill-equipped to deal with the stresses of life? But we must also recognize how overwhelmed those in the middle of this might feel. Maybe you're there tonight. I hope tonight is going to help. I hope it has already helped. Perhaps you, like me, feel overwhelmed when you hear statistics like that. I'm conscious that those figures fit actually with what we see in society more widely. When it comes to mental health, for example, some have estimated that as high as 1 in 4 people will experience mental health problems in any given year. That is a huge figure. It can feel unsurmountable. I long to do something about it, but surely anything we do will be a drop in the ocean compared with that. Maybe you long to make a difference in the world somehow. Perhaps you look at the problems in our society and you wonder how you can make a difference, how you can play your part, how you can make your mark. Perhaps you long to help people with life-dominating issues. Perhaps you long to help people who are caught up by debt or by addiction. Maybe it's something like loneliness that catches your attention. There was a study recently that suggested that Norwich was the loneliest city in the UK. What do we do in the face of the loneliest city in the UK? Like, where do we start to deal with a problem like that? Where do we start dealing with things like poverty? Where do we start dealing with things like identity issues? Where do we start dealing with things like the downsides of social media? How do we deal with these issues that can seem so big and so overwhelming and so pervasive and so all-consuming? Maybe you see other issues. Maybe there's something for your line of work that you see that I don't even know about, but that you would long to change, but you have no idea how you change it. Perhaps it is a struggle to look more widely, if you're being really honest, because of the challenges that you face yourself. Maybe you are struggling with your mental health. Maybe you face financial challenges or relational challenges, work challenges, health challenges. It can be hard, understandably, to even consider these wider issues when we feel tangled up in our own challenges. I remember just over a year ago being in that place myself. I've mentioned this before a few times, but I broke my knee. And I remember kind of this time last year when I was kind of been walking with one crutch for a while, and I started to wonder if I was ever going to be able to walk normally. If I would ever be able to put that crutch down and cross this stage without holding a crutch in my hand. If I was never going to be able to get back to doing the work that I do because I wasn't actually able to walk. And I wasn't thinking about other people's problems because I was wondering if I could overcome my own problems. What do we do when we feel overwhelmed? How do we help others when we feel consumed with overwhelming challenges ourselves? How can we change the challenges that we see in our world? It's gone really quiet in here. We've been doing a series recently that's called I Love My Church. And it is all about why we love our church. And there is so much that I could say about why I love this church. One thing in particular that I was reminded of as I was preparing this message is that I love being a part of something that is bigger than me. I love that our church meets in 3 locations. That we don't just meet here in Norwich, but we meet in Ipswich and in Bratislava. I love that we will probably never see all of the people from our church gathered in the same place at the same time. I love being part of something that is bigger than one room in one location can contain. And yet the bigness of church is not about the size of proclaimers, nor about the number of places where we meet. There is something more too. Something which speaks to these challenges which feel too big to face. A way forward for all of us that feel overwhelmed by what we're up against, either personally or when we look at our world. And I want us to explore what we mean by this today in a way that I hope will both challenge and inspire. That will be powerful for those of us that call this church home, but will also help those of us for whom this whole church thing is a new experience. In what is now the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul, one of the great church planters, one of the great writers to the early church, a man whose words did more to shape our understanding of church than probably anyone other than Jesus, wrote in response to the good reports that he had heard coming out of the church in Ephesus. And he writes this. He says, "That's why, when I heard of the solid trust you have in the Master Jesus and your outpouring of love to all the followers of Jesus, I couldn't stop thanking God for you. Every time I prayed, I'd think of you and give thanks. But I do more than thank. I ask the God of our Master, Jesus Christ, the God of glory, to make you intelligent and discerning in knowing him personally, your eyes focused on clear, so that you can see exactly what it is that he is calling you to do, grasp the immensity of this glorious way of life he has for his followers. Oh, the utter extravagance of his work in us who trust him. Endless energy, boundless strength. All this energy issues from Christ. God raised him from death and set him on a throne in deep heaven, in charge of running the universe. Everything from galaxies to governments, no name and no power exempt from his rule. And not just for the time being, but forever. He is in charge of it all, has the final word on everything. And at the center of all this, Christ rules the church. The church, you see, is not peripheral to the world. The world is peripheral to the church. The church is Christ's body in which he speaks and acts, by which he fills everything with his presence. What a powerful picture of the church. A picture full of energy, power, and hope. This is a relentless church, moving forward with supernatural power, with such power that nothing can stand against it, that not even the gates of hell could stop it. Endless energy, boundless strength, all stemming from Christ, who at the center of it all rules the church. The Pastor Tom has written extensively about this glorious understanding of the church. His book, Relentless, is essential reading if you want to understand what church can be. But there are three things that I want us to note here. Firstly, Paul prays that we would know Jesus personally and would see clearly what he can do in us. He prays that we would be intelligent and discerning, our eyes focused and clear, so that we can see exactly what he is calling us to do. He goes on to talk about the immensity of this glorious way of life that he has for his followers. Paul wants us to get it. Paul wants us to get how big it is, how powerful. He prays that our eyes would be opened to a full revelation of all that the church was intended to be, to the expansiveness. I love the context. Galaxies and governments, and at the center of it all, Christ rules the church. Secondly, this church is big enough. It is big enough to take on the issues of the day. We not feel big enough ourselves, but we are part of something bigger. Something bigger than mental health issues, bigger than loneliness, bigger than poverty, bigger than identity issues, bigger than any of the challenges that we face. Expansive, relentless, infused with supernatural power, determined, disciplined, progressive and persistent, central, not peripheral. The church is not intended to sit around the edges commenting and criticizing. It is meant to be at the start, at the middle, right there, making a difference in the middle of the mess. Thirdly, it is through the church that Jesus speaks and acts, by which he fills everything with his presence. You know, often when we talk about the kind of challenges that I've talked about tonight, we ask, well, where is God in this? Where is God in the midst of mental health issues? Where is God in the midst of loneliness? Where is God in the midst of poverty? Where is God's voice on the esteem issues of our day, on the challenges that are weighing down on our young people? Where is God in the midst of all of this? And here we see the essential role of the church in responding to the challenges in our world. Jesus speaks and acts through his church. Jesus, who chose to be bodily present on earth for a time and who gave up his life to allow us to reconnect with God, calls us to reach out to our world, to be a voice to society, to be the hands and feet that meet the needs we see. As Paul continues in the next chapter, he expands on this sense of church as bigger than any one of us, showing us the extent of the church from a different angle. He says, you're no longer wandering exiles. This kingdom of faith is now your home country. You're no longer strangers or outsiders. You belong here with as much right to the name Christian as anyone. God is building a home. He's using us all, irrespective of how we got here, in what he is building. He used apostles and prophets for the foundation, and now he's using you, fitting you in brick by brick, stone by stone, with Christ Jesus as the cornerstone which holds all the parts together. We see it taking shape day after day, a holy temple built by God, all of us built into it, a temple in which God is quite at home. In Paul's words here, we see that the church is not an organization or a physical building, but a gathering of people. Paul uses this image of the church to describe a structure that is made of many parts. But he is clear that we are the stones. You're no longer strangers or outsiders. You belong here. He's using us all. irrespective of how we got here. But we are not just included in the community. We are included in the opportunity to make a difference. He's using you, fitting you in, brick by brick. I don't know what your thoughts are when someone says, well, they're using you. We often don't use that in a positive sense. But here it means that God, who has all of this expansiveness, who at the center of it all, Jesus rules the church through which he speaks and acts, is using you all. He works through us. We aren't just included in the community, we are included in the opportunity to make a difference. We are built into it, we are part of it, and we all have a part to play. But what happens then when we combine our understanding here? We have seen in Ephesians 1 the expansiveness of the church, big enough, powerful enough, relentless enough to push on through every challenge, supernaturally empowered to be the hands and feet of Jesus, to be his voice to the world, intended to make a difference on his behalf. And in Ephesians 2, we see that the church is not some intangible organization nor some impressive building, but it is people. It is us. Does not that then mean that we are the ones that are intended to make a difference? That we who call church home are the ones who are meant to be infused with this supernatural God-given power to drive back the darkness that we see? The church then is people, and the church is intended to expand. What does it mean if the church is people? What does it mean for it to expand? Well, on one hand, it speaks of an ever-expanding number of people. The church is intended to grow numerically. Jesus charged his disciples. His last words were to go out and make disciples. His intention was that we would add people to the church. One of the values that Pastor Tom wrote into the values of our church from the beginning was that we would be a large and growing church, because that is the picture that we see in the Bible. For those of us that are planted here, we should always expect to add to our number. We should go out of our way to create the sense of belonging that Paul writes of. We should create a community where wherever you're coming from, whatever's going on, you can find friends here. Not find a friendly church, but find friends. We should go out of our way to invite others. We should go out of our own way to encourage them to come along. Dinner parties, which are happening this week, are a key part of that. They're an opportunity to get together for dinner. And the idea of that is that it's an easy place in which to invite people. We need to get away from this mindset. Some of us, we used to be in connect groups, and we need to transition our brains to dinner parties. It's not a weird thing to invite people to. It's not a difficult thing to invite people to. It's going into our workplace and saying, hey, I'm getting together with some friends for dinner this week. Do you want to come along? And it might be less scary than coming in to church. It might be less scary than inviting them along on a Sunday. And that is why we changed to doing dinner parties, because we believe in a church where you can invite people. Because when you get together for your dinner party, it is not so that one day they will come to church. It is so that they get to see the church in action. Because when you meet for your dinner party, you are the church. Because the church is not the service. It is not the organization. The church is the people. You are the church. But I want to suggest to you tonight that the church, if the church is people, then when the church grows, it is not just about growing numerically. It is also about us growing as people. That we, empowered by the Holy Spirit, should grow in compassion and love and acceptance. That we should grow in capacity, in capability, in skill. That we should grow in influence, in engagement, in insight and wisdom. That we should grow in energy and motivation and strength. In other words, we should be stretched by the experience of being in church. I'm a big fan of wearing skinny jeans, but it's only possible because they've got a bit of stretch in them. But you know the interesting thing about these jeans, because they've got elastane in it, which means that if they are stretched beyond a certain point, they will never return to their original dimensions. You can wash them as much as you like, but they'll just sag. They never go back. And I believe that God's intention for you is that you would be stretched to the point that you can never go back to what you once were like. And we might look at those insurmountable issues and say, I can never change that. The things we've talked about tonight, Phil, I can never make a difference. And maybe it is true that you can't make a difference now, but maybe in the future. you could see a change. Maybe in the future you'll have the strength to make a difference. Maybe in the future you'll have the confidence to speak up. Maybe you'll have the wisdom and the insight to bring tangible change. And maybe now is the start of the stretch, this slow, persistent expansion infused with heaven-sent power that pushes you beyond what you can do now and into the person that God's purpose requires you to be. But how does the church get bigger? How do we grow and develop? How do we grow in all of these areas? Well, as he's writing in chapter 4, Paul gives us a glimpse. He says he, Jesus, handed out gifts of apostle, prophet, evangelist, and pastor teacher to train Christ followers in skilled servant work, working within Christ's body, the church, until we're all moving rhythmically and easily with each other. Tell you what, if we could manage rhythmically and easily here, there aren't many organizations in our nation that can claim that. Rhythmically and easily with each other, efficient and graceful in response to God's Son, fully mature adults, fully developed within and without, fully alive like Christ. His final words there, are they not a picture of people that have grown, of people that have developed, fully mature, people who have stepped up into all that they can be? How is it that that comes to pass? What is it that makes the difference? Well, building on the idea of apostles and evangelists that he shared at the start, he says he handed out gifts of apostle, prophet, and evangelist and pastor teacher to train Christ's followers in skilled servant work. And it is through that skilled servant work that we grow, that we develop, that we gain strength, that we expand our capacities. It is not the job of the apostles, prophets, evangelists, and pastor teachers to do the work. It is their job to prepare Christ's followers for the work. So we shouldn't be waiting for our lead pastors to do it when their job is to prepare us to do it. As we engage in skilled servant work and push beyond the boundaries of what we can do now toward the power that is required to make a difference in our world. Servanthood is essential. It is key if we are to grow and develop. And it is as we grow and develop that this picture of the expansive church comes to pass. As it stands, we may not feel capable of making a difference. We may not even know how to break into our chosen field. But the remarkable reality is that to begin the process, we do not have to understand the whole thing. We simply have to serve. I have a theory, actually, that God deliberately doesn't show us the whole story, because we would opt out if we knew the ending before we began. If we saw where God will one day take us and what we will one day do, we would shrink back and we would give up and we would say, I'm never going to be able to do it, God. We would be convinced that we were not good enough, that we were not strong enough to make it through. But instead of laying the whole roadmap out in front of us, God gives us an opportunity to simply serve. And as we serve, we grow and develop. Our capacity grows, and that which once seemed impossible slowly comes within reach. Actually, that's the most powerful way for it to happen. Because as we serve, we step up into greatness. But if we step into a greatness that is born in service, we grow in maturity as we grow in skill and strength. Jesus' disciples were having an argument about greatness. They were talking about which of them was going to be the greatest. And Jesus stepped into this to emphasize the importance of service. Jesus says that what the Gentiles do, what those that aren't Jews do, is that they lord it over each other. But he says, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You see, Jesus doesn't have an issue with greatness. We need great people if we are going to make a difference in our world. Jesus says there is no issue with greatness, but the challenge is how you get there. You don't get there by putting others down. You get there by lifting others up. You don't get there by telling others what to do, but by asking, what you can do for them. It is service that makes the difference. That word great means considerably above average. It means significant, exceptional, extraordinary, sizable. Is that not another picture of growth, of developing who we are? But the pathway to that is to serve. But what does it really look like to serve? Because some of you will be fully on board with this message so far, but you won't be surprised by it. You'll agree with it, but you're like, well, I'm already involved, Phil. I'm already on team. I kind of do it. You're probably sitting there going, yep, sorted. I'm all right. Hope the person next to me is listening. Can I show you what it means to really serve? I know that we volunteer, but can I show you what it looks like to serve? We play our part, but what if servanthood means something more? It was the time of the Passover meal, one of Jesus' last meals before he'd offered his life on the cross. And Judas, one of his closest friends, his closest followers, had headed off to betray Jesus, to give him over to his enemies. And in John 13, we read this. It said, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. Notice Jesus didn't have an issue about his greatness there. He knew the power and the authority that was due to his name. And then he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. Now Peter's like, no, Jesus, you can't do this, because it was so disgusting. Their feet would have been awful. And it was completely unthinkable that Jesus, the master, the teacher, the rabbi, would kneel to wash their feet. And yet Jesus says, no, I have to. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. He said, do you understand what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is the messenger greater than the one he sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed, fortunate, lucky, favored if you do them. I find it striking that this starts with the emphasis on Jesus' authority. He knows that God has put all things under his feet. He knows that his time will soon come. So this is an intentional act. Jesus washes his disciples' feet, showing them what it looks like to love in a tangible way, showing them what it means to serve. Do you think he wanted to wash their feet? I mean, I am no fan of feet at the best of times. But these would have been dirty, disgusting feet from hours spent on the road, sweaty, dusty, dirty. Peter's indignation tells us how disgusting this was. He could not conceive that Jesus would do this to him, and yet Jesus is making a point that this is what it looks like to serve. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. Sometimes it is unpleasant. Sometimes it is not what we would want to do. I wonder if this is the best example of service. If this is not what it means to truly serve. To do not that which is enjoyable or exciting, not that which is fun, not that which is expected, but that which is a step beyond. A step beyond our sensibilities, a step beyond our comfort zone, a step beyond what we would choose to do. I think much of what we do when we volunteer in church should be enjoyable. We should have fun with it. We should enjoy playing and pressing buttons and greeting others. There should be a sense of buzz when we gather together. It should spark smiles and stir up good vibes. But the most potent form of service is that which we do not want to do. It is the conversation that we do not want to have. It is the job that no one else wants. It is working when we'd rather be resting. It is practicing when we could be sleeping. It is greeting those that are hard to talk to. It is a step beyond. It is a stretch that takes us beyond what we thought we were capable of, beyond our own sense of who we are, a stretch that pushes us towards maturity, that expands our capacity, that helps us to become more. Now, that kind of service is not confined to the four walls of this church, of this building. It is not confined to the 2 hours that we spend together on a Sunday. If we are the church, then we don't get to leave it in this room. We have to be it wherever it is that we go. What happens if we serve the people of our world? What happens if it serves the people that we work with? What happens if we serve the people that we rub shoulders with? What happens if we serve the people in our family? What happens if we serve even the people that we don't really like? For some of you, this is the step that you've been looking for. This is the key to the next level. This is the open door to something more. The servanthood comes in many forms. Many are enjoyable, many are fun, but some are challenging. And true servanthood requires a little stretch. If you remember one thing from this message, I would be happy if it was those 6 words. True servanthood requires a little stretch. You know what they say, don't they, about this millennial generation? They say that they're snowflakes. They say that they give up when the trouble comes, when the challenges are there, when things get difficult. But what if we decided that we were going to do more than what was comfortable? What if we decided, those of us that are on the upper end of that or older than that, that we were going to set an example for those that are to come? That even if we've been in church for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, it doesn't dim our passion, it doesn't dim our energy, it doesn't dim our desire to serve and to help and to do what we can do for others. And what if all of those little snowflakes decided that I am going to do more than is required of me? I am going to do more than is asked of me. I am going to do more than is comfortable or more than I feel capable of. I think that if we get enough snowflakes who are prepared to go beyond what they feel capable of, then we might just get the kind of avalanche that might make a difference in our world. Do you see how it all comes together? God's intention is for an expansive, relentless church, bigger than any one of us, that makes a difference in our world. If the church is to grow, it must do so in number. But as we are the church, is not God's intention that we would grow too? How do we grow? We serve. Serving prompts us to maturity. It expands our capacity. It helps our relationship with God, and it makes a tangible difference in our world. But true servanthood is not only that which is convenient or enjoyable, but that which is uncomfortable, which requires uncommon effort, which pushes beyond our normal boundaries. In other words, true servanthood requires a little stretch. And as we stretch, we grow. And as we grow, we get bigger. And the thing we are a part of gets bigger as well. And we find our place in something bigger than ourselves. And when we are part of something bigger than ourselves, we find that we become bigger as well. My prayer is that the church described in Ephesians 1 would be fully realized in Norwich, that it would be fully found in our church. I pray that we would be the hands and feet of Jesus, that we would be his voice to a lost and troubled world. I pray that we would push back the darkness by shining his light, that we would make a tangible difference in mental health, that we would make a tangible difference where there is loneliness, that for those who are caught under the oppression of life-dominating issues, that we would help them to break the back of that addiction, to break the back of that debt, and to step into the life that they too were born to live. I believe that God's intention is that the church would make a difference, that we would make a difference, and that he would be the difference in us. I love our church for 100 reasons and more, but one major reason is that it is my opportunity to be a part of something bigger and to become bigger as I play my part. And I pray so hard that the same would be true for each and every one of you. Come on, let's stand. Let's lift our voices. Let's believe tonight that God is going to be at work in us. Let's choose tonight that we are going to step out of the confines that we see of who we are, that we are going to embrace the stretch. And maybe tonight it's a stretch just to sing. Maybe tonight it is a stretch to lift your hands. Maybe as we sing tonight, you need to make a decision that I am going to go beyond what is comfortable, what is easy, and what is achievable to do the kind of things that will really make a difference in our world. Come on with me. Would you reach out your hands? Let's lift our voices.